Hi guys, my name is Asia Steele. I'm here with Mr. Quan at Golden Chopsticks, a Korean restaurant based out of Columbus, Georgia. Actually, it's one of the top restaurants in Columbus, Georgia for Korean food. Again, this is Mr. Quan. Okay, Mr. Quan, could you tell me a little bit about South Korea, your experience living in South Korea? Are you from South Korea? Are you a native?
I'm Korean. I've never been to South Korea. Both of my parents are from there.
Okay.
I've never been there personally myself.
Okay.
But I did grow up, in the Korean
Korean.
community.
Okay. Um, is there? I'm doing the research basically off of racism there in the country. From your parents' perspective and your perspective, how was that as a young guy trying to immigrate and talk with other minorities? I know that America do have a military base in Seoul, Korea. So how was that for you? Being, I know you're from my generation, so I know things were different for you guys. So could you give me a perspective about that?
As far as racism,
Yes, sir.
Over there, or Koreans over here?
Koreans over there.
Over there.
Yes, sir.
Back in the days, it was kind of 50-50 over there.
Okay.
As far as racism against African Americans. Back in the days, it was about 50-50. Half of the Koreans would accept different cultures and whatnot, and half would not. They would have a problem with that.
Yeah, okay.
But not necessarily uh, racist to the point where they just hate colored people.
Yes, sir.
It wasn't like that.
Okay.
They just didn't want their daughters or son marrying outside the race.
Okay.
It wasn't really a hatred thing. They just didn't want their children to marry outside the race.
Okay.
Which I really don't consider that being racism or anything like that. They were just trying to stick to the culture. But I don't know if you remember Heinz Ward. He was half Korean and black.
Yes, sir.
And he played for the Steelers.
Yes, sir.
And when he won his Super Bowl, he went back. When he was in Korea, the Koreans didn't accept him because he was half black.
Right.
They booed him, but when he won the Super Bowl, he went back over to Korea.
Right.
And they felt, they kind of accepted him for what he is.
Yes, sir.
So the Koreans that felt that hatred toward him back in the day, they kind of regret it now. They apologized to him, to him and his mother, and all of that stuff. But as far as racism, it's not really a big deal.
A real big deal, like it is in the States here.
Over here is totally different.
Okay, so would you say that now in 2019, that it's more acceptable for minorities or foreigners or immigrants to come over to Korea? Do you think it's more acceptable now?
It is now. Definitely.
Okay.
It is now.
Okay.
Because you have more American soldiers going over there.
Right.
Transitioning. You have a set of soldiers go there for a year or two, and come back, and then they send more troops over there. So it's just a rotating thing. And from all the soldiers, we get a lot of soldiers come here and eat.
Right.
So therefore, black, white, Asian, whatever race, the ones that's been over there for a while,
yes, sir.
and then come back home, they tell me all these stories. I've yet to hear one soldier come back and say, "Oh, I don't like Korea. They're so racist." You know,
Right.
never. I've never heard that. All the
Right.
soldiers that I spoke with, all I hear is good things. You know, they
Right.
can't wait to go back. You know, stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Okay.
Now this is coming from more of the African American soldiers.
Soldiers.
Um, they they absolutely love it over there.
Wow.
Now, from what I hear, from what they tell me,
Mhm.
is the Koreans there outside of the base.
Mhm.
They accept them.
More.
You know, they're
Right.
so it's not really a big racism thing over there.
Mhm.
But when it but over here in the states,
Mhm.
we uh, have racism against us
Wow.
a lot. Um, it's mainly from the whites and the African Americans.
Wow.
So I think the racism here is a lot bigger
Bigger.
than anywhere else in the country.
Wow. As a people, what are some of you guys like stress reliefs, or what do you do to try to get over that? Because like here, you see a lot of marches and, people trying to have a conversation. That's the main thing I think here in the States. We try to have a conversation and try to get the bias out and see where it stems from and how can we come together as one. How do you guys feel about that, or how do you all handle coming together and try to get over something that is biased like racism?
Um, well, mainly the the residents, the Korean residents that live here now.
Mhm.
It's a real tight knit community. Like the
Wow.
Koreans stick together. You know, they have each other's back no matter what.
Right.
And when they're encountered with racism, we don't look towards violence or anything like that. We just try to walk away from it.
From it.
But the the Koreans that live here now, they are they they don't venture out.
Okay.
And they really don't venture out and hang with this culture
Culture.
or this culture. They kind of just try to stick together as one culture.
Okay.
So really, it's not. Some people, just can't handle it.
Mhm.
Some can,
Right.
but that's everywhere.
Okay. On your perspective of racism, um, as a Korean male, would you? I know you're married, so you're in, but say for instance, if you wasn't, would you date outside your race? Would that be a thing?
That has never been an issue with me. I've dated almost every race.
Really?
I mean, I've dated blacks, whites,
Mhm.
Asians, Indians. I've dated plenty of different races.
How how did your family feel about that?
Uh, they didn't they didn't like it,
Okay.
but they had to accept it.
Okay.
Um, some families are different.
Mhm.
Some fathers, a lot of older generation
Mhm.
parents from
Mhm.
Korea
Mhm.
are still old school.
Old school. Right.
They want their kids to marry their culture,
Culture.
stay
Right.
with their culture.
Yes, sir.
But for someone like me that was born here and raised here,
Mhm.
my father understood that.
Right.
When I dated when I had a first black girlfriend,
Mhm.
he didn't like it,
Right.
but he accepted it.
But yes.
You know,
Okay.
and that's what I love about my parents.
Wow.
Some things they didn't like, but still they loved me. I'm their son,
Right.
and all they could do was accept it.
Okay. And try to kind of embrace what you have. That is amazing, Mr. Quan. I feel coming from you, just talking from you, I feel that to me, your culture is more open and more acceptance. I get that everyone want to stay within their culture means and keeping everything as pure as possible. And I think because of that, I hear a lot of people saying that they don't want their race to die out, to die out, to die out. But I feel like as humans, we have that ability to blossom more, not just as culture, but as one. Um, and I feel that we can learn as Americans, as an African American female myself and my culture. I feel like that we can learn from you guys how to be accepting. Like you said, they didn't agree, and you can always stem from agree to disagree, but all at the same time, you learn to embrace. I admire that about your culture, that it is willing to change because every culture has that back in the day, or the grandfather rules of living in society, but things change because the generations change, and because we have internet and phones, things are to progress. Um, I want to say thank you for taking time out. I know you're running an establishment, and this is beautiful. I really applaud you guys and what you believe in, your perspective on things, and I think at the end of the day, we all can learn from one another. And the thing here about America is we could agree to disagree, but it's all about accepting. Um, and that's where I feel like the struggle is. But since, like you said, but now since the generations has changed, you guys are more you accept change, and I think that's a big part of racism from my perspective. Where I'm looking at it, that from hearing you talk, is that you have to learn to accept. That was very interesting to hear about and to discuss. And I think um, as an adult, sitting down and talking with other adults, that if we learn to accept change, that things would be, we could end racism. How do you feel about that?
I don't think racism will ever end here. It would be great for it to end and everybody just come together as
Right.
one.
Right.
But the way, I mean, it has gotten better from back in the days up
Right.
until now.
Right.
You guys have more rights.
Right.
But racism to me is well and alive still
I
in the United
understand.
States.
I understand.
I grew up on the south side of Columbus,
Okay.
so that's predominantly all blacks
Right.
that I grew up around.
Right.
I seen growing up there. I seen all my friends were black.
Right.
And when we had an altercation with law enforcement,
Uh-huh.
I would see how they would treat my friends. They would treat me a little differently,
Right.
but they'll be more harsh on my friends.
How did that
color.
make you feel?
I feel bad, you know, and it's just I just even the new generation now of Caucasians, the ones that are still racist, you're not born racist. You're
Right.
taught, you know, and it's still being taught till this day.
Interesting.
It really is. I see it every day. And me, I was always taught to not to look at a person's skin color.
Right.
You look on the inside. It
Inside.
doesn't matter what your skin color is. I love everybody. I don't care if you're black, purple, green, white. You know, if you're a good person, you know, I don't hate on nobody.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I accept anybody.
Right.
But you have your, you know, different categories of people. You know, you
Right.
have the lower income people that kind of struggle, and you know they get hit the most with a lot of racism.
Right.
The higher class African Americans, they still get hit with racism as well, but not as much. as the lower class, lower income African Americans.
Yes, sir.
They're looking. People these days just look down on them, which I don't think is right.
Right.
Everybody's human.
Right.
Doesn't matter what your skin color is. So therefore, there's not a racist bone in my body. I was never raised that way, and I will never be that way. And I have 4 boys, and I raised them the same way.
Wow, 4 boys?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a blessing.
I've never been a racist. Never will be.
Right.
I will never teach my children to hate anybody.
Right.
I'm just trying to instill all the good stuff that my parents instilled in me into my kids.
Okay.
And they understand.
Okay. Okay. Oh, this is a blessing, Mr. Quan. I applaud you for your beliefs. I applaud you for your perspective. I applaud you, your culture in general. And as an African American female, that goes a long way. That you have witnessed the struggle of racism, like real racism, and that it is different. As I was doing my research on your parents' country, um, that's what I learned, that they're more, not so much as is racism, but it's more as a culture thing to keep the race pure. And I understand that, and I get that, and I think some of our people, in perspective, like the Muslims, believe in the same thing. And I understand that, but I also believe that we can all become as one, and it's just a culture. Because at the end of the day, our Maker makes that decision for us.